open up this segment of the wrap-up with a heavy heart as we mourn the loss of two sports icons at opposite ends of their careers. 24-year-old Marlins pitcher Jose Fernandez was found dead after a crash into a jetty and a boating accident. 87-year-old golfing legend Arnold Palmer was also found dead this weekend. I had the joy of watching Jose Fernandez pitch in Philadelphia, and I can tell you his stuff was electric. His ability to keep batters guessing with every pitch, use the movement of his pitches, and just get into the batters' heads was incredible. I once heard a story about Jose Fernandez, and if you don't know the story about him and his attempt to emigrate from Cuba and with his grandma finally being able to come over, I highly recommend it. It's a great story. But on his third attempt to emigrate to the United States, Jose Fernandez was on a boat when a woman fell overboard. Not knowing who this woman was, Jose Fernandez jumped into the water to save this woman. That woman ended up being his mother. Hearing that story and seeing the talent that this kid had, and only being 24, knowing that we lost possibly one of the greatest pitchers who could play the game so early, we don't get to see the talent that he has, because at such a young age, his ability to just sit even the veterans down was absolutely incredible. Arnold Palmer may not have been the greatest golfer to ever play the game. His 7 titles are only 8th all-time on the list behind Jack Nicklaus' 18 and Tiger Woods with 14. However, Arnold Palmer was able to bring people to the sport of golf like no one ever was before. Arnold Palmer's electrifying play, with his power shots to his fist pumps every good move, brought people to the sport like no one was able to do. Golf is now popular, I believe, because of Arnold Palmer, and I think the sport has changed because of him. This legend has changed the sport of golf, and while he didn't play competitively since 2006, he will always shape the sport of golf. Both icons will truly be missed. Now we're going to kick it back to the desk for some NFL talk.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Deshaya Green, and this week we have 2 NFL analysts, Jake and Justin, here to give you NFL updates on this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, and one thing I want to talk about, Justin, is the 5 undefeated teams remaining in the NFL, those being the Patriots, the Ravens, the Broncos, the Eagles, and the Vikings. So 5 left, 3 in the AFC, 2 in the NFC. And I just kind of want to break down each team, what I've seen. With the Patriots, I think even though they've been missing Tom Brady, the thing with them is they have probably the greatest coach in NFL history in Bill Belichick, who can seemingly blow out a team without even having a quarterback. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett play well all these weeks. They have running back LeGarrette Blount, who's currently leading the league in rushing. So they're getting the job done, finding ways to win without their star quarterback, and they're playing the Bills this week, and then they'll get Brady back next week. So honestly, even though they haven't had Brady, I don't see the Patriots slowing down at all.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. A lot of talk on Thursday Night Football when they went to play the Texans is that they were going to have a hard time with Jacoby Brissett, and Belichick actually modified his playbook to fit a mobile QB, and they actually did really well, I thought. I mean, they blew out the team. That was unexpected, I thought. But it was really unusual, and I thought it was fun to watch, even though it was a blowout on Thursday Night Football. Like Jacoby Brissett adding a mobile QB aspect to the Patriots. You're mostly used to seeing like a pocket passer, even with Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. The offense is crazy, and I mean, we're all a lot of Patriots fans were hoping to see like Julian Edelman be QB in Week 4, but that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. That offense seems to work no matter who's at QB, and that's great.
So the next undefeated team in the AFC is the Baltimore Ravens, who some people probably wouldn't expect to be undefeated, especially after they went 5-11 last year. But of course, people point to the level of competition they've been playing. They've won a bunch of ugly games against some of the weaker teams in the NFL, and the Bills, the Jaguars, and the Browns. But the thing I see with the Ravens is they've gotten their star players back in Terrell Suggs, Steve Smith, Joe Flacco. And the other thing is their free agent acquisitions in Mike Wallace and Eric Weddle are really paying dividends. You know, Wallace has scored 3 touchdowns for them already after a lot of people thought he was done after not putting up some impressive stats last year in Minnesota. And then Eric Weddle really gives them leadership in the secondary. They're going to have to stay healthy going forward, and their competition is going to get a lot harder. But right now they're in first place in the AFC North, and they just have to keep winning tough games like they have been doing all season, which has really been the story of how they've won in previous history.
Yeah, again, I couldn't agree more with that. Last year they had a lot of questions in the secondary. Weddle's going to help out with that. Getting Joe Flacco back healthy after, what was it, an ACL tear?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was big for them. Don't forget Steve Smith. Steve Smith's still out there. He put up some good numbers against Jalen Ramsey too. Yeah, and Mike Wallace was a surprise for me too, because coming out of Minnesota, he didn't really do a whole lot there. Obviously, Stephon Diggs was ahead of him, but yeah, that was a big surprise for me too. I think they're going to have to really show up against the Raiders. They lost to them last season around September time, and I believe around that time they had most people on the field, most of their starters. But I think that's pretty good for them to have a 3-0 start, especially against the Jacksonville Jaguars and Buffalo mainly. I mean, no offense to the Browns, but Browns. Yeah, I mean, that's good for them to have a 3-0 start, especially to lead their division too.
And then the Broncos, the last team in the AFC remaining undefeated, the defending Super Bowl champions. What I've noticed with them, it's kind of been like it was last year, all about their defense, even though their quarterback Trevor Siemian threw for over 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns and no interceptions last week against the Bengals.
Actually got AFC Player of the Week.
Yeah, and it's going to be basically the same story with them. Their offense might not put up, all the sexy statistics with the defense that they have. But honestly, with Trevor Siemian, he's probably playing better than Peyton Manning was last year at this point. So having that, I don't see any sign of the Broncos slowing down, especially with the Super Bowl MVP on defense and Von Miller.
Yeah, I mean, adding on to the Broncos there, C.J. Anderson's doing great things for them too. Trevor Siemian honestly surprised me too, being a Northwestern QB. I mean, there's not a lot of history there. I mean, their biggest QB was Otto Graham. Mm-hmm. So to see him do well, I mean, he's in a very good situation. He has Demaryius Thomas, he has Emmanuel Sanders, he has C.J. Anderson, and he has an iron defense to back him up along the way behind a really solid offensive line as well. But I think that's good for him to be there. That's a great start for him with management, John Elway backing him up all the way. Really, honestly, I think they have potential to go pretty far. I honestly could see them making the playoffs. I know it's early talk. But honestly, that's good to see that Trevor Siemian is actually getting a chance when a lot of people weren't giving him that. They weren't giving him really anything, really.
And then in the NFC, there's 2 undefeated teams remaining. The first being the Philadelphia Eagles, who, with the overturn they've had with the Chip Kelly situation, hiring Doug Peterson, trading away Sam Bradford, bringing in Carson Wentz, trading up. And that's honestly turning out to be one of the best moves of the offseason. Last week they absolutely dismantled the Steelers 34-3, and I was expecting that game to be lopsided, like having a score like that, but I wasn't expecting the Eagles to be on top.
Expected the Eagles to put up that many points and have the Steelers put up 3. And I honestly don't know how Ben Roethlisberger and all the weapons that he had. I really don't know how he didn't put up any numbers. And I was watching some of the highlights, and they did have passes that were for 20 to 40 plus yards, and they just could not deliver in the red zone. But good job on Carson Wentz. I mean, I was watching him too, and his ability to get outside the pocket and make plays. Obviously, everyone's talking about the Darren Sproles play. It was only a 22-yard throw, but that's pretty significant because he dodges the tackler and he managed to go outside the pocket, finds Darren Sproles open, and Darren Sproles goes something like 44 yards for a touchdown after the catch. But I mean, good for Carson Wentz. He got NFC Player of the Week, and he should have, honestly. He put up some pretty good numbers. It was like over 300 pass yards, and he found ways to keep plays alive. And I mean, good for Philadelphia. I mean, all aboard the Wentz wagon, I guess, for now. But we'll see how that plays out later on. I really did not expect that game to go that way, and I don't think anyone else did either.
And then the last undefeated team is the Minnesota Vikings, who, they've had a lot of season-ending injuries. Adrian Peterson's potentially out with the torn meniscus. He had surgery on that last week. They lost Teddy Bridgewater with the torn ACL and the dislocated knee before the season even started, which we all thought was going to be devastating for them. So they go and they get Sam Bradford, who really, I mean, with their defense absolutely shutting down opponents, like, they handled the Green Bay's offense relatively well.
They handled the Panthers extremely well.
They limited Cam Newton and the Panthers to 10 points. But still, I mean, if Sam Bradford finds a way to play mistake-free football and manages the game, doing just enough to get as many points as they need, and then turning it over to the defense to shut opponents down, I think the Vikings could be fine. And looking at them right now, I don't see any reason why they can't be the favorites in the NFC North. One thing I did want to say about these 5 undefeated teams is, as much as people talk about having a franchise quarterback being the key to success, to having a successful team, all 5 of these undefeated teams rank in the top 10 in points allowed for defense. So I think having a shutdown defense in today's NFL could be just as important as having a franchise quarterback, because all 5 of the undefeated teams have a top 10 defense right now. Absolutely,
I couldn't agree more with that. And the best part about the Minnesota Vikings, I think, is that even like a couple years ago, if you were to hear that AP was out for the season or out for 8 weeks, that just meant that the Minnesota Vikings weren't going to win games. And now they have Matt Asiata as a backup. And I mean, he's doing well. Sam Bradford, a lot of people are skeptical about bringing him in, but the thing is, just like you said, with the defense that they have, they're not going to ask too much from Sam Bradford. All he has to do is not turn over the ball, and if Stefon Diggs is open, just find him. I mean, he's top 3 right now in receiving yards in the NFL. So I mean, They did extremely well. I mean, in defense of Cam Newton, I think Cam Newton was playing a little egotistical in their last game. He got a safety in the end zone. He really should have just thrown it away, but I think he's kind of letting some things go to his head a little bit. But for the Vikings, yeah, I mean, I felt for the Vikings when Teddy Bridgewater tore his ACL, and apparently it was a very gruesome injury. And I felt really bad for them, and then for them to lose AP, I was like, I was a little skeptical. But the defense, they're not to be overlooked this season, that's for sure. They're doing extremely well, and I hope the best for them, honestly.
Which teams do you think in Week 4 will remain undefeated?
I mean, I personally don't see any reason why the Patriots wouldn't be remaining undefeated. Rex Ryan, the head coach of the Bills, has already been talking smack on the Patriots. Not Tom Brady. He's not playing. I don't understand why he would want to poke the bear there. If I had to pick one, that would be my safe bet.
Yeah, absolutely. The Patriots are definitely going to stay undefeated, I would think. And the Eagles have a bye week, so they're going to stay undefeated no matter what. But yeah, I would think the Patriots would stay undefeated. Minnesota goes to play the Giants. That'll be pretty interesting. Denver, I could also see staying undefeated. They go to play Tampa Bay, so I don't think they should have any problem there at all. Philadelphia might have its hands full when they come off their bye week. They're playing the Lions. It could be close there. The Ravens are going to play the Raiders. Again, I don't know if I see the Ravens winning that one. Last season they played in September, and it was actually a shootout. It was like a 33-30 win or something like that. But the Raiders are looking pretty different this season too. So we'll see. I mean, that's going to be tough for the Ravens. That's a good defense. So
I think it's going to be a close game because having a West Coast team travel to the East Coast is actually very difficult on West Coast. And actually, the game you're talking about last year was in Oakland. And that was when the Ravens, they played Denver the first week, then they stayed out west for a week and they played that game, ended up losing. But I'm expecting a close game. If they're going to win, it's going to be another ugly win like we've seen from the Ravens. I don't want to give a pick out since I'm a Ravens fan, but I think it's going to be a very closely contested game.
I think it'll come down a lot to if Joe Flacco's going to have time to throw. I mean, you have people like Khalil Mack coming at him, Bruce Irvin, and then for the Ravens, they have to keep that secondary together because there's Amari Cooper and there's Michael Crabtree. And Derek Carr is pretty accurate if you give him the time. So, I mean, the Ravens have a pretty good, decent front. So, as long as they can get to Derek Carr.
Their offense, the Ravens' offense needs to come alive. They've only scored 4 touchdowns so far in their first 3 games.
Thanks, Jake and Justin. Now we're kicking it back to Matt with college football.
It's college football season, and what is going on with the ACC? As of right now, it looks like about 8 or 9 teams could come out and contend. Louisville, Clemson, Florida State, and Wake Forest. That is not a typo. Wake Forest is currently undefeated and on top of the Atlantic Division. In the Coastal Division, North Carolina, Miami, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Duke is even still alive after last week's win against Notre Dame. So what does this mean for the ACC? Well, the ACC has brought in an outside source in case of a 3-way tie in the Atlantic Division between Louisville, Clemson, and Florida State. As of right now, there is still a chance for that. Quarterback Lamar Jackson for the Louisville Cardinals currently leads the Heisman vote. However, North Carolina quarterback Mitch Trubisky has flown under the radar. Mitch Trubisky is 102 for 137, a 74% completion rate versus Lamar Jackson's 74 for 126, just a 58%. Mitch Trubisky has 1,306 yards, Lamar Jackson 1,330 yards. Mitch Trubisky 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Lamar Jackson 13 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Mitch Trubisky actually has a better rating, 178.6 compared to Lamar Jackson's 176.6. While North Carolina and Louisville have really only played one competitive team, this week is really going to show us who can come out on top. I personally think North Carolina is going to come out on top. Their receiving core, their top 4, Ryan Switzer, Austin Proehl, Mac Hollins, and Bug Howard, warmed up in bathrobes last weekend in their game against Pitt because they believe the nation is sleeping on them. I think North Carolina comes out on top against Florida State. I think Clemson comes out on top against Louisville. And I think Miami will come on top of Florida on Georgia Tech. Overall, the ACC is interesting. We'll have to see how everything will play out with the weeks to come. Now we're going to kick it to Division II sports as we go back to the desk for Husky Sports.
Thanks, Matt. On the last segment of this week's edition of the Wrap-Up, we're going to talk about Bloomsburg University's sports teams. I'm Jake, and I'm joined by Anthony for this segment.
Bloomsburg men's soccer team was defeated by Philadelphia University in overtime last Wednesday by a score of 3-2. Goals were scored by Austin Transu and Seth Walker. The team falls to 1-7-1 on the year. The men take on Slippery Rock University Saturday, October 1st in Bloomsburg. The game starts at 3:30 p.m.
The field hockey team defeated Mansfield last night 4-1. Erica Krebs, Sam Peters, Eleanor Kirby, and McKenna Mahan scored for Bloomsburg. Kirby's goal was her first of the season. Bloomsburg is now 8-2 on the year, and they are nationally ranked. The next home game for the Huskies field hockey team is Saturday, October 8th against Seton Hill at 3:30 p.m.
The Bloomsburg football team is 3-1 and is currently in first place in the PSAC East. On Saturday, the Huskies defeated Shawnee 54-14. Running back Lawrence Elliott Jr. had 3 touchdowns. After 2 road games, the Huskies return home this weekend to face Millersville on Saturday. Kickoff is at 2 p.m.
The women's soccer team lost to visiting Shippensburg 1-0 in overtime on Tuesday. Now 4-3-2 overall, the Huskies look to rebound at home against Slippery Rock on Saturday. The match starts at 1:00 p.m. That wraps up this week's edition of The Wrap Up. We'll see you next time. Go Huskies.